update for our Patreon community, and this is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work. Today's update is brief and I hope to the point. Once again, we are hearing from Republicans and from Mr. Trump how great the economy is. I'm not surprised. The man is running for re-election, and presidents have always put very rosy-colored glasses on to tell us about how wonderful the economy is, whether it is or not, as they go into an election, hoping that people will believe them rather than look at the actual evidence. So if that were all that were going on, I would not be talking to you about it. But it isn't. What strikes me as astonishing is the commitment of the media establishment, many of whom do not like Mr. Trump and are hostile to him, and also many in the establishment of the Democratic Party who feel either unable to criticize the claim that the economy is quote-unquote great, or actually agree with that perspective. If Mr. Trump wins the election later this year, one of the supporting causes for that victory will be the failure of mainstream media and the failure of the leadership, the centrist leadership of the Democratic Party, to criticize what is easily and necessarily a false claim. Let me briefly summarize. The level of debt in the United States is without historical precedent. The government not just surpassed a $23 trillion government debt, because of a $1 trillion deficit. All the promises of the good results from the tax cut for corporations and the rich in December of 2017 have proven to be false promises, false claims. We have not had a boom. Those tax cuts did not pay for themselves with economic growth. We haven't had the promised 3 to 5% rates of growth. We've had 2 to 3%, which is our normal poor performance. The People's Republic of China, in contrast, currently has a very low rate for them of 6+%, 2 to 3 times what the United States has. Corporate debt is at record highs. Private debt of individuals at record highs. We are a society limping along with levels of debt we've never seen. So severe is it that starting last September, the Federal Reserve had to pump huge amounts of money into the economy because what they called the repo market, I won't go into the details here, but what is basically part of the immense borrowing by corporations, is in deep trouble and needs, you guessed it, another bailout. As if that weren't enough, let's take some more statistics. We are at a level of inequality in our society that we haven't seen for over a century. From the time at the end of the 19th century we look back on and call robber baron days. And there's no end in sight. That's right, we have an unspeakable inequality that capitalism is producing in the United States and globally. Oxfam International, just this last week, releasing this statistic that summarizes it all. 162 wealthy individuals, the 162 wealthiest in the world, together own more property and wealth than the bottom half of the population of this planet, 3.5 billion people. That is grotesque. That's not the sign of a healthy economic system, neither in the United States nor in the rest of the world. But I'm not done. We are having extreme problems with our opioid crisis, with the fact that millions of Americans over the last 10 years, and indeed over the last 25, have lost jobs that paid well, had good benefits, and were secure, and replaced them these days with jobs that have stagnant wages, many less benefits, and no security at all. Now, I could go on, but any evaluation of our economy that did not take into account those statistics I just mentioned is lying to you. To cherry pick one or two statistics, like the overall unemployment rate, and not to mention that part of the reason unemployment is low is so many of the unemployed have stopped looking for work and therefore aren't counted as unemployed anymore, because that's the way our government counts. Anyone who doesn't explain that would be the equivalent of you're going to a doctor saying, "Doctor, I've been feeling terrible, please let me know what's wrong." The doctor takes your temperature, it's normal, you're fine. You would never go to that doctor again because you don't evaluate a person on one piece of information, and you sure as hell don't do it with an economy. Unless you're not evaluating, you're just hustling people, which is all this is. Shame on the mainstream media for not looking into this and doing their job. Bigger shame on the leaders of the Democratic Party letting Mr. Trump get away with these claims and thereby helping him be reelected. The only other thing the centrist Democrats and the mainstream media do with Mr. Trump is to bash China. And it's the same mistake, the same failure to look at the reality in a rush to be ideologically in a place that is bad for this country and even worse for its future.